Hello everyone, Darko2012 here with Global Government News, and I'm covering an article posted or published by BBC News magazine, and it's titled "Should We Bring Back Rationing?" And this was posted on January 7th, 2010, not too long after the Copenhagen summit. And the reason I'm posting this is because it falls under the topic of eugenics, which is, starvation is one form of eugenics, whether you want to have people volunteer for it or force them to, economically, with economic warfare, where they literally don't have money to buy food. They obviously can't grow their own food because there's so many laws and whatnot, and unless you live in a rural area, of course. But, um, food, water are the main of course, the main things you need to live, and those are weapons that can be used against you unless you're totally self-sustainable, which back in this time, right, back in this time, or actually previous to World War II, around the Great Depression, most Americans, 70% were self-sustainable, and now it's like around 10%. So that's not looking too good if we hit really hard times as far as food goes. But someone made an interesting point, actually a family member during Christmas, where they said, "Isn't it weird how like during the World War II and that how people were rationing food and everything, and they were all involved, and how nowadays um, we've had this war going on for how long, and there's no rationing. Nobody has to be involved with anything." And that's kind of a good point because a lot of people they don't really care because the war is not affecting them, because they don't have anything to really sacrifice, right? They don't have to. There's no draft. They don't have to ration, and they may be going off on a point, but I think that's a good observation, um, that one of my family members made, was that, and I think that's actually a good point because they don't want people thinking about sacrificing, or they don't even want to think about a war even going on. They just want them to go about their business. So that's why they don't have them really. They're never going to have the draft. They're not going to have rationing for wars, is because they want to keep people distracted and keep them focused on at home and not at war. So this is a kind of a different story here, but I'm going to go ahead and keep reading it here. It says it's 70 years since World War II rationing was brought in, and many past comment on the contrast between the current obesity epidemic and those healthier days of Darth. But how did people handle rationing, and could we use lessons to fight obesity now? So yeah, this article, the main reason I'm posting this is that so anybody that comes across this who doesn't know about eugenics or population control can understand that this is their goal, and they'll do it whatever means necessary. And this whole economic crisis was done for a reason, to lower your standards of living in the UK, here in the US, and we're feeling it. And so I'm just kind of trying to tie this in as almost like a warning to those who aren't aware of eugenics and the elite's goal, their agenda to bring down the population from 6 billion to 500 million. And this is just one of the ways that they do it, right? Because they're not going to do it. Um, well, they could do it forcefully, but like they learned in World War II with the Nazis and all that, and that type style, that doesn't always work. It's better to actually give people the illusion that they're free and have them volunteer their own enslavement. So this is how they go about it. They say it's for the environment, right? We need to ration for the environment, and we need to help people, be healthier so they're not obese. So that's all I'm going to say on it. I'm just going to try to read as much as I can in the next 6 minutes because I only have 10 minutes. So um, on January 8th, 1940, the UK tightened its belt and entered a period of privation that was to percolate through every layer of national consciousness. As the system gathered momentum, the ordinary ration came to encompass meat, cheese, butter, margarine, bacon, ham, tea, preserves, sugar, and cooking fats such as lard. There was also a separate points system for canned food, dry goods, and other groceries. Clothing and petrol were also rationed. but it was perhaps food rationing that looms largest in the nation's memory. So, in other words, what they're going to say here is that even after the war, people they were still being taught to ration. That eventually people just stopped eating that, like especially because this is focused on the UK. About you guys just have a different diet. You guys eat a little bit different things than us here in the U.S. But it shows you it shows you how how the diets have changed just based on that rationing. So it's basically whether it was purposely done or not. I mean, I don't think anyone really knows unless they spend hours and hours of research and time to figure out whether there was really a need to ration during World War II. I know that it was a humongous war, and I know that it probably did make sense to ration, but at the same time, there wasn't a free market economy, and we were pure fascists, just as we are now, if not worse. So, just moving on here, it says every week the nation's housewives would queue with their ration books in shops as they registered with to buy their allowance of groceries. Moving down here, social ranker Woolton had this genius for publicity, says Terry Chapman, a historian at the Imperial War Museum, who helped create the forthcoming Ministry of Food exhibition. The ministry had a wonderful PR organization which thought of Dr. Carrot and Potato Pete. People welcomed the advice that was given, although some of it today looks very patronizing. Yeah, it was propaganda, that's what I'm saying. It was, look at this. How much people, they just know. Look at these potatoes. How much it's dropped, dude. They're just out of their diet. How what we have eat has changed. Factor by which the consumption per person per week in 2007 differs from the value of 1945. I've showed you enough of this. You can go back and pause it if you need to see more. Set against World War I, when there was often an atmosphere of social rancor over the idea that some people were doing well out of the conflict, the rationing of the next war had a binding effect. By and large, it was accepted as part of the war effort. It was a way of bringing the nation together. Rationing meant that there was no avoiding the war, says Stuart Ross, author of Rationing at Home, Modern Rations. Yet there are many parallels between a generation having to go short because of the war and one now being told to change its eating and purchasing habits by the government and environmental campaigners, the globalists. The author, Philip Pullman, told a newspaper last year that he advocated World War II style rationing for environmental reasons. But could we bring back rationing to fight obesity or save the planet? Would people accept the state forcing them to eat less? The pioneering television chief Marquette Patton, who worked as an advisor to the Ministry of Food during the war and who broadcast her recipe ideas on the radio, is not sure it would work. There was no point in bringing back rationing, but there is in bringing back healthy eating and bringing back no waste. That was one of the golden rules. And yet for many people there was great positives in rationing. So many of the foodstuffs that bring about obesity were in short supply, said Charman. Of course, that's not easy to say. Every aspect of the rationing diet was wonderful. Most fresh vegetables, like fruit and that, were not rationed, but could often be in short supply despite a dig for victory allotment campaign. And it says boring diet. Actually, I'm just going to move down here. Sedimentary life. What's the last part here? What would surprise most people is that according to Government National Food Survey, at least the amount of calories each person consumes a day has steadily declined since rationing era. Admittedly, excluding alcohol, soft drinks, the figure was 2,269 in 1942 and only 1,750 in 2000. The expenditure in food survey was replaced the NFS 2001. It says here, whatever the statistical picture, the nature of our calorie consumption has changed dramatically. The UK has grown more sedentary over the years, shifting to office-based jobs and away from calorie-burning manual work. Even the housewife in 1942 have worked much harder. For David Haslam, chairman of the Obesity Forum, the current wave of overeating has its roots in the end of rationing in the 1950s and the shift to a society of plenty. We have a situation where food is available everywhere, open around the clock, cheaper, poor quality, bigger portions, and a situation where food is ubiquitous. It is the first time really in history where food is limitless. We haven't developed. Actually, I'm going to have to stop here, guys. But there you go. Just pause it if you need to read it. And